Hello everybody, here we are today. We're going to be doing a season preview over my favorite team, the Vancouver Canucks. Now before we start, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So the first talking point is going to be what happens with the whole Elias Pettersson situation. Pettersson is a guy that was drafted with the 5th overall pick in 2017 and then ended up winning the Calder in 2019. He is also a player that has got almost a point per game average over his career, 323 points in 325 games played, and is coming off of a big 102-point season. Now, I think a big thing now that the organization had to decide this offseason is what he's worth exactly to them. Because, again, he is a very talented player. I don't know if I had put him up there with some of that top-end talent in the NHL. You know, your McDavids, your Matthews, whatever. But he is still a very talented player that anybody would love to have. And so for the organization, I think they're kind of wondering what's going to be the case. What is the norm for him? Is the 102-point season the new norm? And they are also probably looking at some other stuff. You look at the fact that he's been a really good goal scorer in his career, especially the past 2 years. He has back-to-back 30-plus goal seasons, has a career shooting percentage of 16.6%, well above league average. And it kind of remains to be seen if he can continue to grow, because if the 102-point season is the standard every year, or just where you expect things to be, and that is incredible for them and for the organization. They also have to worry a little bit too about whether other teams are interested in him, because, well, let's be honest, with RFAs, a lot of times you look at these guys and you say, oh, they're going to be safe because, you know, not enough interest is garnered in them. Whereas guys like Pettersson, I do think some teams with some cap space would try to go out and get him, because with the Canucks being how they are a little bit strapped for cash thanks to some bad deals. And while I do think they would definitely make some moves to be able to keep Pettersson, other teams are probably financially better off to be able to try to get the young talent. And for the moment, too, you kind of got to wonder where Pettersson's mindset is with him as an organization. Or with the organization. The Canucks are no longer that team that ended up almost making the Western Conference Final back in 2020. They are a team that has missed the playoffs multiple seasons now, and unless they would have had that really hot run to end out the season last year, definitely would have been more towards the bottom of the barrel in the league for the overall standings. Still not a great team, so I do think for him, he's got to figure out if he does want to sign a new deal. Is it a short-term deal? Is it a long-term deal? Is it a medium deal? In my opinion, I think in the best scenario, if I'm being honest, in a realistic sense, maybe like a 3-year deal where it's kind of a bridge deal where you pay him, you know, what you can pay him, probably a lot, but also you can say, well, within 3 years we hope to accomplish this, and to get back to being one of the better teams, or not even one of the better teams, but a team that felt like it had direction in the playoff run that they ended up going on, whereas now it kind of feels like they are wandering around and you're not really sure what they're doing. For Pettersson, I'm sure that's weighing a lot on him in terms of personal legacy, team accolades, stuff like that. Everybody wants to win the Stanley Cup. Can't do it if you're not in the playoffs, something Vancouver's not been able to do recently. So whether or not that impacts contract negotiations remains to be seen. The second thing is going to be, how does Filip Hronek fit in with the team, and what's going to be the future going forward for him and the Canucks? Because they ended up trading him, kind of felt like out of nowhere, from the Red Wings to kind of help solidify the blue line that obviously does need some help. But he is a guy that we ended up giving up a first-round pick and a second-round pick, if I'm not mistaken. And for him, he played 4 games with us before ended up missing the rest of the year. It was like late March with a shoulder injury. In that time, though, I don't want to kind of look at this too much because it was just 4 games. But he ended up averaging over 24 minutes a night with the team. He, unfortunately, is an RFA after this season, but I do think a good thing is if Vancouver is financially going to be able to make things happen, they really are going to get a sense of what they're getting with Hronek here. He is a guy that does a little bit of everything. He can do the power play, he can play on the PK, obviously plays at full strength, and is one of those guys that so far will get like 30 to 40 points a season. They played him a lot with Tyler Myers. I say a lot, again, it's only 4 games that he ended up playing with him, but he is a person that I do feel like is a positive impact for the team. And I don't want to look into this stuff too much, but besides Quinn Hughes, nobody averaged more time on the power play as a Canucks defenseman last year than Hronek. Now again, 4 minutes, so we can't look at that too much, but you could be looking at him having a breakout season or another, better season, I guess you would say, a career year, where maybe he gets 50 points, maybe he gets 55 points because he gets more time on the power play. I'm not going to go and say 55 points. I'm not going to say that I expect that right now, but a guy that does a little bit of everything for you, that can eat a lot of minutes for a blue line that definitely needs some help. I don't think that that's the end-all be-all here, and I'm just really scared of him having a big year to where another team could try to, go and make an offer for him, because, again, a guy that eats a lot of minutes, that is possibly going to be coming off of a big year. Plenty of teams would be interested in him, and I would hate to not see the return for what we ended up trading for him. And I do think right now that he is going to be one of those guys that easily could get top pairing minutes with the team. So my final talking point here is whether or not Patrick Allvin, the Canucks GM, ends up panicking early. I look at the first month and a half of the schedule, if you want to call it that, October, November, and I think there's a lot of games, it might be going into December as well, where there's a lot of divisional games with Calgary, Seattle, Edmonton, games that mean a lot, and some teams that obviously impressed last year. I think Calgary didn't impress, but they had a really good finish to the season. And for myself, I look at it and I know that it could be a tough test early on. So if they, start out slow, I just worry that Allvin would say, well, we're not looking too hot. We obviously haven't made the playoffs the past couple of years. It's time to pull off some trades. My opinion is they need to wait a little bit, just because of the fact that you look at it and you say, well, if they wanted to pull the trigger early, they might as well have just done a lot of off-season trades. So for me, I think you understand that this team is not going to be first or second in the division by the end of December. At least I don't expect that. And I do think that this is going to be one of those situations where patience is going to have to be implemented here. I look right now and I say that this team is not in a spot where they're going to finish first and second in the division by the end of the year. They're going to be one of those teams that if they do make the playoffs, it's going to be as the third seed or as a wild card. So we really need to be able to kind of wait, maybe towards like February, could be a little bit before that, could be a little after, as we get closer to the deadline. Maybe some things work one way or the other to make a decision that takes the franchise one way or the other. I guess if we hold pat, that could depend on where we're sitting in the standings. But yeah, I think it's going to be one of those problems where we could see some decisions made early and then, everything falls apart. But again, looking at guys like Connor Garland and probably Brock Besser would probably be the best way to look at this. If those guys are mentioned by name by Allvin at some point, if we're struggling, especially early on in the year, I think that would be a good indicator that we could be seeing them for a trade. Now, Besser is kind of the Kevin Fiala, if you will, of the Vancouver Canucks, or it seems like he always was on the trade block, never gets traded. Fiala, that is. Besser kind of feels the same way. I don't know. Some of those guys, especially I think if their names are thrown out in there on the media, then I would say that they are probably the guys that would indicate a trade's coming or a rebuild's coming. So just wait a little bit if you're Allvin, and hopefully maybe if things are going well in January, you could say maybe we can make some small additions. I don't know. Just don't panic early, I guess, is the verdict here. So overall, I would say that I am pretty excited for this upcoming season. However, I think that I'm a little bit of a realist. I would say that playoffs seem unrealistic at this point. However, I do think if Hronek does wonders for our blue line and some of these guys end up performing like they did last year, and then some other guys end up living to expectations or going a little bit above that, we could be in a good spot where we are better than what we saw last season. I am kind of hopeful. Andrei Kuzmenko is a guy that scored 40 goals last year. Mikheyev didn't get to play a full 82 games because he had some injuries. There's potential. That being said, we blew a lot of leads early last year. Our PK was the worst in the entire league last season. We fired a head coach for a reason. Well, for a variety of reasons, and while I was a big Bruce fan, obviously the results were not what we were hoping for. And then Thatcher Demko struggled a bit last year as well. He struggled more than a bit, but he struggled. That's the point. That being said, obviously with Tocchet there, he's had a season to kind of get to know the players, or at least an off-season to know the players more, and then hopefully be able to relate to them and implement his system in the way that he sees fit. So I guess we will see. Again, I guess kind of just saying that I really don't expect us to make the playoffs, but I am going to be hoping for the best and expecting maybe not the worst, but maybe a bottom 10 finish in the league again, or just kind of fringe around there. Best case scenario, I see us being a little bit above average. But anyway, what are your thoughts on the Canucks for this upcoming season? I would love to hear them down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe, have a great night, and you go love hockey, all right? Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.